Joaquín Guzmán Lara, known globally as El Chapo, became a figure shrouded in myth, a larger-than-life character in the global narcotics trade. For decades, his name conjured images of ruthless power and audacious escapes. But beyond the headlines and sensational stories, what was the true trajectory of the man who led one of the world's most formidable criminal organizations? This investigation seeks to peel back the layers of legend, examining the documented evidence and official reports that trace his rise from humble beginnings to the pinnacle of a vast criminal enterprise, and ultimately, his dramatic downfall. Born in La Tuna, Bataraguado, Sinaloa, in 1957, Joaquín Guzmán's early life was marked by extreme poverty and limited opportunities. According to extensive biographical accounts from investigative journalists like Malcolm Baith, his family cultivated opium poppies and marijuana, a common practice in the region. This early exposure to the illicit drug trade, not as a choice but as a means of survival, would profoundly shape his future. Official records suggest his formal education was minimal, perhaps completing only primary school, a detail often cited to highlight his unlikely ascent. Guzmán's entry into the organized drug trade, according to DEA reports, began in the late 1970s. He started as a driver and enforcer for Héctor Luis Palma Salazar, a key lieutenant in the Guadalajara Cartel. This was a crucial apprenticeship under Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo, El Padrino, who consolidated drug trafficking in Mexico. Guzmán quickly gained a reputation for ruthlessness and efficiency, ensuring drug shipments reached the U.S. border intact and on schedule. This period honed his logistical skills and forged vital connections within the burgeoning cartel infrastructure. The Guadalajara Cartel, under Félix Gallardo, was unprecedented in its scope. It controlled nearly all illicit drug trafficking into the United States via Mexico during the 1980s. Intelligence reports from the DEA indicated the cartel operated with a hierarchical structure, integrating various smaller gangs into a cohesive, powerful network. This centralized control, managing routes for marijuana, heroin, and cocaine, was a blueprint for future cartels. Guzmán observed and learned these strategies firsthand, absorbing lessons in organization, corruption, and territorial control. A pivotal event that reshaped the Mexican drug landscape was the 1985 abduction, torture, and murder of DEA agent Enrique "Kiki" Camarena. According to U.S. government investigations and court documents, Félix Gallardo ordered Camarena's killing in retaliation for a massive marijuana raid. This act provoked an unprecedented response from the U.S., intensifying pressure on Mexican authorities. While Guzmán was not directly implicated in Camarena's murder, the subsequent crackdown led to the fragmentation of the Guadalajara cartel, creating new power vacuums and opportunities for ambitious lieutenants. Following Félix Gallardo's 1989 arrest, the Guadalajara cartel splintered. As reported by various law enforcement agencies, the vast empire was divided among his top lieutenants. This division led to the formation of three major groups: the Tijuana Cartel, the Juarez Cartel, and the Sinaloa Cartel. Guzmán, along with Palma Salazar and Ismael El Mayo Zambada, leveraged their existing networks in Sinaloa to establish their independent organization. This moment marked the formal birth of the Sinaloa Cartel, a group that would eventually eclipse its predecessors. Under Guzmán's leadership, the Sinaloa Cartel quickly distinguished itself. Court testimonies from former cartel associates indicate that Guzmán pioneered innovative smuggling techniques. He was among the first to use extensive tunnel networks under the U.S.-Mexico border, allowing for the transport of massive quantities of drugs with reduced risk of detection. This strategic ingenuity, combined with ruthless territorial expansion and a willingness to engage in bloody conflicts, solidified his position and elevated the Sinaloa cartel's influence. Reports suggest his network stretched from South America to the United States. Guzmán's ascent wasn't without setbacks. In 1993, a brutal shootout at Guadalajara's International Airport, attributed to a rivalry with the Tijuana cartel, resulted in the death of Catholic Cardinal Juan Jesus Posadas Ocampo. While El Chapo claimed he was the target, investigators concluded his hitmen mistakenly killed the cardinal. The ensuing public outrage and intensified manhunt led to his capture in Guatemala in June 1993. He was extradited to Mexico and sentenced to 20 years in a maximum security prison, marking what many believed was the end of his criminal career. Despite his incarceration at the Puente Grande maximum security prison, reports and later trial testimonies revealed that El Chapo continued to manage his empire from behind bars. Through an elaborate network of bribed guards and officials, he maintained communication with his associates. Sources like Anibal Hernandez Snarkaland detail how he enjoyed privileges, including gourmet food, conjugal visits, and even organizing parties within the prison walls. This period underscored the deep-seated corruption within the Mexican penal system and Guzmán's persistent influence. In January 2001, just as an extradition request to the United States was gaining momentum, El Chapo orchestrated his first spectacular escape from Puente Grande. Accounts vary, with official reports suggesting he bribed numerous prison officials and was wheeled out in a laundry cart. Other versions, from sources like former prison staff, claim he simply walked out disguised or was allowed to leave. Regardless of the exact method, the escape was a monumental embarrassment for Mexico and cemented Guzmán's legend as a master escape artist, immediately triggering an international manhunt. After his 2001 escape, Guzmán went into hiding but immediately set about rebuilding and expanding his criminal enterprise. Law enforcement officials noted a significant increase in the scale and sophistication of Sinaloa Cartel operations. He focused on securing more control over drug routes, particularly those for cocaine from Colombia and heroin and methamphetamine production within Mexico. The cartel's reach extended into various legitimate businesses as a front for money laundering, further integrating its illicit earnings into the national and international economies, according to U.S. Treasury reports. The early 2000s saw the Sinaloa Cartel enter into a brutal territorial conflict with the Juarez Cartel, particularly for control of the lucrative Ciudad Juarez smuggling corridor. This rivalry, documented by Mexican authorities and human rights organizations, unleashed unprecedented levels of violence across northern Mexico. Thousands died in turf wars, assassinations, and mass killings, turning cities like Ciudad Juarez into battlegrounds. The conflict showcased El Chapo's strategic ruthlessness and his willingness to use extreme violence to achieve dominance over rivals. Under El Chapo, the Sinaloa Cartel transformed into a global enterprise. Investigative reports from the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime detailed how the cartel established connections across continents, from South America to Europe, Asia, and Australia. Guzmán diversified his smuggling methods, utilizing everything from narco-submarines and cargo planes to fishing boats and hidden compartments in commercial trucks. This adaptability and willingness to invest in sophisticated logistics allowed the cartel to bypass traditional law enforcement measures and expand its market share significantly. With El Chapo's re-emergence, the DEA redoubled its efforts to capture him. He quickly ascended to the top of their most wanted list, alongside figures like Osama bin Laden. The U.S. government offered substantial rewards for information leading to his arrest. This period marked a significant escalation in cross-border cooperation between U.S. and Mexican agencies, though it was often fraught with mistrust and intelligence leaks. U.S. officials frequently expressed frustration over the perceived lack of political will or pervasive corruption hindering Guzmán's capture. By the late 2000s, the Sinaloa Cartel, under Guzmán's leadership, was widely considered the most powerful drug trafficking organization in the world. Reports from the U.S. Department of Justice estimated the cartel was responsible for trafficking billions of dollars worth of illicit drugs annually into the United States. Its organizational structure was described as highly sophisticated, with a complex network of operatives, corrupt officials, and enforcers. This period also saw the cartel expand its reach beyond traditional drugs to include human trafficking and extortion, diversifying its criminal portfolio. The hunt for El Chapo became a top priority for both U.S. and Mexican authorities. Intelligence operations, involving surveillance, informants, and signals intelligence, intensified across Sinaloa. Despite numerous close calls reported by law enforcement, Guzmán consistently evaded capture, often by mere minutes. His extensive network of lookouts and safe houses in his home state of Sinaloa provided a critical advantage. Locals in some areas, according to various reports, viewed him as a modern-day Robin Hood, complicating efforts to gain actionable intelligence from the public. Over a decade after his first escape, El Chapo remained at large, occasionally resurfacing in unverified reports and public sightings. One notable instance, recounted by journalists, involved him attending a public event for his daughter, heavily guarded, but still defying the authorities. These anecdotes, though often lacking official confirmation, fueled his legend. The inability of authorities to capture him for so long contributed to the perception that he was untouchable, operating with impunity in his stronghold, the Golden Triangle region of Sinaloa. In February 2014, after a 13-year manhunt, El Chapo was finally recaptured in Mazatlan, Sinaloa. Mexican Marines, working with U.S. DEA agents and marshals, tracked him to a beachfront condominium. Reports indicated he was apprehended without a single shot fired, a stark contrast to the violence often associated with cartel arrests. This capture was hailed by both Mexican and U.S. authorities as a significant victory in the ongoing war against drugs, proving that even the most elusive kingpin could eventually be brought to justice. Following his 2014 capture, Guzmán was sent to Altiplano, Mexico's highest security prison, designed to be escape-proof. This facility was specifically constructed to house the country's most dangerous criminals, with rigorous security protocols. The Mexican government, sensitive to the embarrassment of his previous escape, assured the international community that Altiplano was impregnable. They dismissed U.S. requests for extradition, asserting their capability to hold him securely, a decision that would soon prove to be deeply regrettable. On July 11, 2015, El Chapo once again defied expectations, executing another sensational escape from Altiplano. This time, he vanished through a sophisticated, mile-long tunnel dug directly from his cell's shower area. The tunnel featured ventilation, lighting, and even a motorcycle on rails. This engineering feat, detailed in subsequent investigations, required immense resources, planning, and insider assistance. The escape was a profound humiliation for the Mexican government, triggering widespread condemnation and renewed calls for his immediate extradition to the U.S. The discovery of the escape tunnel shocked the world. Forensic analysis and engineering reports revealed a meticulous construction. The tunnel, approximately 32 feet deep, stretched 1.5 kilometers or nearly a mile, connecting his cell to a small house under construction outside the prison walls. It was equipped with air ducts, electric lights, and reinforced walls, demonstrating an engineering prowess typically associated with major infrastructure projects. This level of sophistication strongly suggested years of planning and significant investment, further implying deep-seated corruption within the prison system. During his time as a fugitive, El Chapo controversially granted an interview to American actor Sean Penn and Mexican actress Kate Del Castillo. The meeting, detailed in a Rolling Stone article published shortly after his recapture, provided authorities with critical intelligence. Penn's account offered a rare glimpse into Guzmán's mindset and life on the run. While some criticized the ethical implications of the interview, law enforcement confirmed it was instrumental in narrowing down his location and intensifying the final pursuit, according to various media reports citing intelligence sources. The second escape ignited an even more intense international manhunt. Mexican special forces, supported by U.S. intelligence agencies, launched Operation Black Swan to track down the fugitive. The focus narrowed to his home state of Sinaloa. Authorities meticulously analyzed communication intercepts, surveillance data, and informant tips, closing in on his inner circle. The pressure was immense, as the global reputation of Mexico's government hung in the balance, scrutinized by an international community demanding his definitive capture. On January 8, 2016, Guzmán's freedom ended in Los Mochis, Sinaloa. Mexican Marines raided a house after intercepting communications. A fierce shootout ensued, resulting in 5 cartel members dead, but El Chapo managed to flee through a secret tunnel once again. However, he was quickly apprehended after emerging from a manhole and attempting to escape in a stolen car. This dramatic recapture, less than 6 months after his prison break, marked the definitive end of his life as a fugitive, according to official government statements. Following his third capture, the political landscape had shifted dramatically. Under immense international pressure, the Mexican government expedited El Chapo's extradition to the United States. In January 2017, he was flown to New York, where he faced a multitude of charges, including drug trafficking, money laundering, and murder. This decision was a significant victory for U.S. law enforcement, who had pursued Guzmán for decades. It also signaled a departure from Mexico's previous resistance to extraditing its most prominent drug lords. Guzmán's trial in a Brooklyn federal court began in November 2018 and lasted for 3 months. Described by media as the trial of the century, it unveiled an unprecedented amount of detail about the inner workings of the Sinaloa Cartel. Dozens of witnesses, including former associates and corrupt officials, testified against him, painting a picture of a vast, brutal, and sophisticated criminal enterprise. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence, including ledgers, intercepted communications, and graphic accounts of violence. A critical aspect of the trial involved extensive testimonies from former high-ranking cartel members, who turned government informants. Individuals like Vicente Zambada Nibla, El Mayo's son, and Damaso Lopez Núñez, El Licenciado, detailed Guzmán's elaborate smuggling operations, his use of violence, and his vast network of bribes. Their accounts provided direct insight into the cartel's daily activities, hierarchical structure, and its deep penetration into Mexican institutions, as documented in court transcripts and journalistic reports from the trial. In February 2019, after 6 days of deliberation, the jury found Joaquín Guzmán Lara guilty on all 10 counts against him. The charges included engaging in a continuing criminal enterprise, drug trafficking, and conspiracy to murder. In July 2019, he was sentenced to life imprisonment plus 30 years, along with a forfeiture of $12.6 billion, a sum representing the estimated proceeds of his illicit empire. This verdict, widely reported globally, ensured that El Chapo would spend the rest of his life in a U.S. supermax prison, with no possibility of parole. El Chapo is currently incarcerated at ADX Florence, a supermax prison in Florence, Colorado, often referred to as the Alcatraz of the Rockies. It houses the nation's most dangerous criminals and terrorists. Inmates are held in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day, with minimal human contact. This facility is designed to prevent any possibility of escape or external communication. For Guzmán, it is the ultimate isolation, a stark contrast to the luxurious and privileged prison life he once enjoyed in Mexico. Despite Guzmán's imprisonment, the Sinaloa Cartel continues to operate. While some analysts predicted its decline, reports from the DEA and Mexican security experts suggest that the cartel has adapted. Ismael El Mayo Zambada, Guzmán's longtime partner, is widely believed to have taken over leadership, maintaining the cartel's vast network. The sons of Chapo, known as Los Chapitos, have also asserted their influence, leading to internal power struggles and continued violence within the organization. The myth of El Chapo persists, but the cartel structure remains resilient. El Chapo's saga significantly impacted U.S.-Mexico relations, particularly concerning drug policy and security cooperation. The persistent challenges of corruption within Mexican institutions were repeatedly highlighted, straining trust between the two nations. However, the successful extradition and trial also demonstrated the potential for effective collaboration when political will aligns. Experts like security analyst Vanda Felbab-Brown emphasize that while one kingpin is gone, the underlying issues driving the drug trade, such as poverty and demand, remain unaddressed. The story of El Chapo, while extraordinary, is ultimately a symptom of a larger, systemic problem: the enduring global demand for illicit drugs. As long as there is a market, there will be individuals and organizations willing to supply it, often through violence and corruption. Law enforcement officials and policymakers consistently point out that dismantling cartels requires a multifaceted approach, addressing both supply and demand, as well as the socioeconomic conditions that foster such criminal enterprises. El Chapo's reign was characterized by brutal violence, as cartels fought for territorial control and drug routes. According to Mexico's national public security system, the years corresponding to his peak influence saw a dramatic increase in homicides. While his capture was a major blow, the power vacuum and ongoing fragmentation of criminal groups have not necessarily reduced violence. Instead, it has often shifted, with new factions emerging, perpetuating a relentless cycle of conflict that continues to plague regions across Mexico. The future of the Sinaloa Cartel, and indeed other Mexican cartels, remains complex. Analysts suggest that while charismatic leaders like El Chapo are removed, the organizations often prove remarkably adaptable. They evolve, diversify their illicit activities, and exploit new technologies and markets. The challenge for authorities is not merely to capture individuals, but to dismantle the intricate financial, political, and social networks that allow these criminal enterprises to flourish and persist across generations. Joaquín Guzmán Lara, the man behind the legend of El Chapo, now spends his days in isolation, a far cry from the opulent lifestyle he once commanded. His story, as documented by countless reports and investigations, is not just one of a drug lord's rise and fall, but a stark illustration of the challenges faced by nations grappling with organized crime, corruption, and the insatiable demand for illicit goods. The myth of El Chapo may endure, but the facts reveal a calculated criminal whose ultimate legacy is a trail of violence, devastation, and systemic instability. The war on drugs, intensified by figures like El Chapo, has come at an immense human and economic cost. Billions of dollars have been spent globally on interdiction and enforcement, yet the flow of drugs persists. In Mexico, estimates from human rights groups indicate hundreds of thousands have been killed or disappeared since the conflict escalated in the mid-2000s. The true price of El Chapo's empire is measured not just in its illicit profits, but in the profound societal scars left behind, a grim reminder of unchecked criminal power. What lessons can be drawn from the rise and fall of El Chapo? Analysts suggest that focusing solely on kingpins, while yielding symbolic victories, often fails to dismantle the underlying criminal infrastructure. A more comprehensive approach, tackling corruption, investing in community development, and addressing public health aspects of addiction, is often proposed. The narrative of El Chapo serves as a complex case study in criminal enterprise, demonstrating both the individual audacity and the systemic failures that allowed such power to flourish. While El Chapo is now behind bars, his shadow, and the shadow of the Sinaloa Cartel, continues to loom large over Mexico and the international drug trade. The demand for illicit substances ensures that new figures will inevitably emerge to fill the void, adapting and evolving their methods. The story of El Chapo is a chilling testament to the persistent allure of power and profit in the criminal underworld, and the relentless struggle faced by law enforcement and societies attempting to contain its devastating reach. The era of El Chapo saw the transition from traditional, hierarchical cartels to more decentralized, nimble networks, yet with enhanced global reach. Early drug lords often operated with less sophisticated logistics and relied heavily on brute force. Guzmán introduced innovation, employing advanced tunnels and diversifying transport. However, both eras underscore the deep-rooted corruption enabling these operations. The challenge for authorities has consistently been to adapt faster than the ever-evolving criminal organizations they pursue, a cat-and-mouse game that continues. Beyond the statistics and strategic analyses, the true cost of El Chapo's reign is etched on the lives of countless individuals. From families torn apart by violence to communities living in fear, and the pervasive corruption that erodes trust in institutions, the human impact is undeniable. Reports from organizations documenting human rights abuses highlight the devastating ripple effect of organized crime. Understanding these stories, rather than just the criminal's journey, offers a more complete picture of the societal consequences of the drug trade. El Chapo's legacy is a complex tapestry woven with threads of ruthless ambition, strategic genius, and immense brutality. For some, particularly in his home region, he remains a folk hero, a figure who provided jobs and challenged authority. For the vast majority, however, he symbolizes the destructive power of organized crime, leaving behind a legacy of fear, violence, and institutional damage. His story serves as a cautionary tale, demonstrating how one individual can wield immense destructive power and shape the destiny of nations. As Joaquín Guzmán Lara serves his life sentence in a U.S. supermax prison, removed from the world he once dominated, many ponder if this truly represents the final chapter in the saga of the Sinaloa Cartel. While his personal reign has ended, the organization he helped build and the global drug trade it operates within continue to evolve. This investigation into El Chapo's rise and fall illuminates not just one man's criminal trajectory, but the enduring, complex challenges posed by organized crime in the 21st century.